So babes, this is a sequel to an iconic video I made earlier, and if you've watched that video, you know our favorite catchphrase in that video is, hold my hand, let's say it together. Just because a plant is easy doesn't mean it's beginner friendly. Yeah. And that is basically the essence of this video and why there needs to be a part 2, because there are so many plants that are just like standard go-to beginner friendly plants. We forget that yes, those plants are truly easy, but beginners will always make certain mistakes, and these plants may not necessarily accommodate or allow them to get away with such mistakes. Okay, so as usual, not only are we going to be exposing these plants for what they really are, but I'm also going to be providing beginner friendly alternatives, actual beginner friendly alternatives, because I know spring is coming and a lot of you are going to be catching the houseplant bug around this time. Don't worry, this video is going to make you make the right decisions. Okay, anyways, without much ado, let's proceed with the first plant. The first plant, and honestly, I have to be honest with you guys. It's a money tree, Pachyria aquatica. So why I am saying I need to be really honest with you guys about this plant is I've actually attempted to grow this plant indoors on multiple occasions. I have a beautiful specimen. She's iconic. She's also variegated. She's just, oh my god. And I've attempted to grow her indoors on multiple occasions, but I always bring her outside. I'm like, no babes, I'm taking you outside so it doesn't ruin how you look, which appears to be the #1 issue with growing these guys indoors as a house plant. I don't see a lot of people talking about. They can be very leggy. Your money tree can start off being beautiful, tall, statuesque, having the gravitas that we all love, you know. But the moment you bring it into your home, it just starts to twist and turn. So in my opinion, this is a plant that even though it would tolerate indoor light conditions, it appears to actually need a lot of light than a lot of people realize. So I will say as a beginner, except maybe you have a very bright spot and you've somehow magically figured out the best grow light for a high demanding light plant, then yeah, this may not be, you know, the best choice for you. Also, I've come to realize that your money trees, they love to stay moist. I mean, it makes sense because Pachyria aquatica, water, right? So I think these guys actually love to stay a lot moist than a lot of people realize, because I've quickly noticed if they are not watered regularly and often and they are left to stay dry for long periods of time, they will start to drop leaves. And that's why a lot of people end up with this really sparse looking money tree. So you see how all of this may be really complicated for a beginner who may just freak out at the slightest yellowing leaf. That is why I've gotten you a much better alternative. It will give you the same tree-like structure of your money tree. Also has gravitas and is extremely indoor friendly. Ladies and gentlemen, your cornstalk Dracana. This is like the OG indoor plant, especially for beginners, and also if you have like low light. I literally have one in my dark living room, in the dark corner of my living room, and it doesn't get leggy, it doesn't get stretchy, it is drought tolerant, even though it will appreciate being watered regularly. Babes, if you're a beginner, instead of reaching for that money tree, get this cornstalk Dracana. I feel like we need to honestly give more clouds to this plant because it is such a great indoor plant. Whether you're a beginner, you're an amateur, you're a seasoned veteran, chef's kiss. Now moving on to the next one. This one, I'm honestly of the opinion that this should not be sold as a house plant. This is actually an outdoor landscaping plant. It is used in outdoor landscaping in this part of the world. It literally grows like a weed outdoors. No one thinks to grow this indoors. Ugh. It's your Tradescantia zebrina. First things first, let's tackle the fact that even though this plant is sold as a hanging plant, darling, this is not a hanging plant. It doesn't want to trail. It is a ground cover plant. it just grows on the ground in its native habitat and in the wild. Now, the problem with keeping this plant as a hanging plant, and this is something that more established and more experienced collectors, houseplant growers will tell you as well. After a while, the plant begins to look sparse and die out from the top of that pot. And that is because the weight of the plant just falling under gravity starts to take its toll at the base of the stems and the roots. The plant just doesn't like it and honestly cannot support itself being downwards. It wants to actually crawl on the ground. This is always what will happen. And as a beginner, trust me, it is going to freak you out. You may be like, oh my God, what have I done wrong? So yeah, for that reason, no. Another reason, like I mentioned earlier, is that this is not an indoor plant, girlies. This is also not a low light or medium light plant. A lot of Tradescantias are high light, full sun plants. They don't want to grow in shade. They want to be full sun. These are plants that can actually take the full intense hellfire sun we have in this country. So as a beginner, chances are you're going to buy this plant thinking it's a low light plant, not knowing that, babes, it doesn't want, it needs full sun and or very, very bright light if you're going to attempt to grow this indoors. So instead of getting that Sabrina, I have the perfect alternative for you as a beginner. Hold on. This babe here, a Pothos Enjoy. Not only are you going to get a plant that is as colorful and as vibrant as your Tradescantia, but you're also going to get a plant that loves to trail. In fact, however you want to grow this plant, whether it is trailing, standing, on the floor, in the sky, it absolutely doesn't mind. And it's also just as fast growing as your Tradescantia, while being extremely indoor friendly. So this is a much better alternative to any Tradescantia that there is. At this venture, if you're finding this video useful and you haven't subscribed yet, what is the problem? What is your problem? What is your issue with me? Okay, hit that subscribe button right now, like right now. Thank you. This next one is a very, very common house plant. I still do not have the courage to grow this plant indoors, even though a lot of people do that and have been able to do so successfully. It's actually a tree. It's a tree, and all of us are just growing these miniature versions of it in our pots. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a rubber tree. I don't think this is a beginner-friendly plant. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons. The first one is that a lot of the girlies do not realize that this plant actually goes dormant. This plant goes dormant, and if you're not aware of it, and if you do not know how to take it out of dormancy, you're going to be stuck with a rubber plant that will not grow for months. It has happened to me before. I have a whole video dedicated to this. Okay, so I would strongly advise you check that video out to know when your rubber plant is in dormancy and how to get it out of dormancy. Another thing is that this is a plant that is notorious for stem rot. I remember this was a major issue I encountered when I was a beginner. My rubber plants would just start looking droopy, and then I will unpot it and the roots will be fine, but the stem is soft and mushy. And it took me a while to realize that this soil, the type of soil you use, is extremely important. These guys have very strong fibrous roots that can honestly pretty much handle any type of soil. But you see that stem, the stem part, that is usually the issue. If it comes in contact with soil that is very moisture retaining, like heavy clay-like soil, the stem will rot, and after the stem starts to rot, the roots will also start to rot as well. So your go-to soil for rubber plants is either something that is sandy or something that's a bit more chunky. Also, when it comes to ficuses, they don't like to have their roots played around with. Like, I see some of you when you're reporting your fiddly figs, you just bring it out and then you scatter the whole roots, and then you come out here to tell us, oh my god, my fiddly fig has dropped all its leaves. Well, yes, that's true for a lot of ficuses in my experience. I grew both the fiddly fig, the ficus audrey, the ficus elastica. Once you're reporting these guys, just take it out of the pot, stick it in the next pot. You don't have to start playing around with the roots. Again, all of this may be difficult for a beginner, which is why I'm saying this is not a beginner friendly plant. Also, when it comes to, in fact, just go and watch this video because I had so much to say about rubber plants in that video. A better alternative is a plant that a lot of people, I don't see a lot of people, in fact, this entire genus, people don't appreciate this genus a lot, and it's a fantastic genus of plants. It needs more love. I'm talking about the Fabian aralia. Yes, aralias generally need more spotlight in this community, guys. But specifically this Fabian aralia that has just as much gravitas, as much presence, as much of a statement like a rubber plant. And this is one that does really well indoors. In fact, I'm currently on the hunt for this one. I have like the perfect spot in my living room that I want to place it there. It's also really low light tolerant as well. Girlies, we need to get into aralias. We need to get more aralias. We need to add more aralias to our houseplant collection. They are honestly really slept on. I will say though that when it comes to aralias, right, they are extremely prone to transplant shock. So this is a plant, again, like when you're repotting it, don't play around with the roots. Just carry it and just bam, just stick it inside the soil and you're pretty much good to go. Now this next plant, I feel like we honestly need to come together and form an association of people who have been scarred by this plant. We need to form an association and we need to actually sign a petition that the internet needs to reveal this plant for what it really is. A spider plant, and it is high time we expose this plant for what it really is. She is not an easy plant. I don't even think this plant is easy, period, whether for beginners or for amateurs. I have killed this plant on several occasions, and at this point I've honestly given up on ever keeping a spider plant alive because I don't even think there is a consensus on the internet about how to take care of a spider plant. Each one of the girlies is providing conflicting information. 1 minute they're telling you water when it is moist. The next minute they're telling you water when it is dry. So there isn't a consensus amongst people about how to take care of this plant. I think people see that this is a fast growing plant, and then this is also one of the easiest plants to propagate. Like it essentially just propagates itself, it produces those cute little dangling pops. So people assume just because it propagates very easily and grows very fast, then it is an easy plant. Now, they are not the same thing. This plant is also notorious for having these crispy edges, which I find extremely infuriating because no matter what one seems to do, it just always will have those brown crispy edges. And also in my experience, this is a plant that you have to be able to, needs to be a fine line when watering it. If you overwater, it's unforgiving. If you underwater, it is also unforgiving. So all of this may prove very daunting for a beginner. Okay, but don't worry, I've got you an alternative that not only will give you peace of mind, but it is just as beautiful. In fact, it is even more beautiful. So when it comes to your Syngonium albo, not only are you going to get a plant with beautiful, stable, emphasis on stable variegation, you're also getting a plant that grows fast growing. It is just as fast growing as your spider plant, even faster growing in my opinion, without being as elusive and as annoying. You're also getting more versatility, so you can choose to grow this plant whether it is trailing down on a bookshelf, or you can have it climbing on a trellis, or you can have it growing on a moss pole. It's also not as pest prone as other Syngoniums. So I've come to realize that Syngoniums, especially the more bushy and compact ones, tend to be really pest prone, especially towards mealybugs. I feel like because this one has a more vining growth profile, it is less likely to have pests like mealybugs hiding within it. You do, however, need to ensure that your Syngonium is kept consistently moist. I mean, it can take some drought, but if you want it to grow really vigorously and you want it to be fast growing, just ensure that this is kept consistently moist and you're good to go. She's a much better looking and less problematic alternative than that atrocious spider plant. Ew. Okay, so oh my god, this next one, I would say it also has similar issues with a spider plant. It is gorgeous, it is fast growing. This plant is actually an invasive weed in certain areas, and sometimes it can just pop out as a weed in your collection and in your garden. It is a plant that in my experience will take trial and error before you're like, oh, okay, this is what this plant actually likes. Just like the spider plant, you need to have a fine line when it comes to watering these guys. Too much water and you're going to lose them to root rot very quickly. If you water very little, this plant is never going to be bushy. It's just going to be scanty looking all its life and just constantly lose leaves. Again, all of this can be very tricky for a beginner who is trying to master the art of watering plants. Also, this is one of those plants that where you place it can honestly ruin its growth profile. So this is actually a plant that is low light tolerant, low to medium light tolerant to a certain degree. But if you place it in an area where there's a brighter source of light next to it, it will always reach for the brighter source of light. Even outdoors, babes, you're literally growing this plant on a shaded part and there's an unshaded part next to it, it will just be stretching towards the unshaded part. By default, this plant will always grow to the brightest source of light, and that can honestly ruin its profile. It can get very stretchy and very leggy looking, and you may just have to chop so it can grow back to look bushy and come back. So my advice is that you need to place this plant in an area where it receives even an ambient light. Instead of getting an Oxalis triangularis, get yourself an Aglaonema. I'm thinking an Aglaonema firecracker. Oh my god, this is such a beautiful plant to behold. You're still getting that colorful foliage, you know, that led you towards that Oxalis in the first place. And when it comes to Aglaonemas, there's so many different types. I'm sure there's a purple Aglaonema that exists if you want a purple plant. Right? There's so many different types to choose from. So Aglaonemas, I will admit, especially the more colorful ones, some of them have the tendency to get really leggy. Okay? So these more colorful ones, you want to place them right next to a bright source of light, or preferably right next to a window, okay? But I will say specifically, get the Aglaonema firecracker. This, in my opinion, is a very good indoor colorful Aglaonema. The more bright light you give it though, more vivid its color and variegation will be. If you give it lower light, it will start to lean towards a greener color. Okay, that's just something you need to just bear in mind. And Aglaonemas are extremely drought tolerant. Just water when they are dry and you're good to go. So anyways, darlings, we've come to the end of this video and I'm curious to know your thoughts. As usual, you know, we keep it real in the comments, so I will see you in the comment section. Let's gist and let's talk more about this expose. Until then, I'm gonna see you in the next video.